You got
Gotcha. Hashtag Yon Gang.
Hi, honey.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I figured if we were switching roles this week, I should start the yawn.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you got me. I was over here burping, and then you yawn. And so I went immediately from burp to yawn, and it was
That must have been
a weird experience, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you recall what we're doing this week?
I mean, yeah, this is Easter week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so this Friday is going to be Good Friday, and then there's the zombie parade on Sunday.
Yeah. Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday.
What's holy about Thursday? Is that when Jesus was betrayed?
I mean, it's just the day before Good Friday.
Oh, well, I mean, I figured after the Last Supper, he gets betrayed.
Yeah. And
so that's what makes it holy, betrayal.
I'll be honest with you. It's technically a celebration day in the Catholic Church. But a celebration day is just a special day, right?
Yay, fuck Jesus.
But it's been a long time since I have done the Holy Thursday. Here's what I remember about Easter week when I was growing up. We went to church 4 times that week. Well, actually, not technically 5. We did I had youth group on Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. So I had youth group Wednesday, then we had Mass on Holy Thursday, Mass on Good Friday, Mass on Holy Saturday, and Mass on Easter Sunday. Like, we went to church it was the whole thing.
I mean, honestly, I just remember a bunny shitting eggs and then hiding his shame.
I mean, you grew up Catholic.
I mean, I grew up Catholic. That doesn't mean I paid attention. I was I was a small child.
Yeah.
Like by the time I got to the point where I would remember shit, I was in public school.
Well, I mean, I wasn't in public school until I was in high school. Or I mean, I wasn't in private school until I was in high school.
Okay. Well, then my family just wasn't all that into the whole strictly Catholic kind of thing.
Oh yeah, my stepmother was like Sister Mary Joanne.
All right, so to get on with the intro, since we're flipping the script this week and I'm going to be doing the Bible study, honey, do you want to tell me what you know about the resurrection of Jesus?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to preface this with people. I'm so sorry to disappoint you. I'm just going to say ahead of time I'll disappoint you because my intros are not nearly as fun as John's, but I did it before once for Christmas, right? Mm-hmm. We did this for a Christmas one. So resurrection. And so this is just a general story, not specific to any gospel, just the general idea. And we're starting right after he's dead.
Yes, right after he's been entombed.
Okay. So the next day, right? Mm-hmm. So basically what I remember from the next day after he's entombed is that there was a group of women, I think included his mom and his Jezebel girlfriend, right? And maybe one other or 2 others. I don't remember exactly. But they went to the tomb. They got some spices or something. I don't know if they were planning on, maybe they were atheists and they were going to cook them up or sacrifice. I don't know. They brought spices and oils and shit. And I feel like if you're gathering spices and oils and shit, you're about to cook something, but they're going to his tomb. So I don't know what the fuck they were going to do. But anyways, they were taking it. And, they get there. Now, I do know that the story varies here. Sometime the stone over the tomb, the big fucking stone that's covering the doorway, is rolled away. It's not there. Sometimes there's guards, sometimes there's not. They go into the tomb to do whatever hocus pocus they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to sage the cave or whatever, but they go in. Now, sometimes there's one dude and sometimes there's 2. Mm-hmm. They're dressed in white. I think I remember they're dressed in white and they're angels, I believe. And the women talk to him or them and they tell him, but there's no Jesus, right? There's no body. Mm-hmm. But they do see Jesus is somewhere naked because his burial shroud shit is still there. The strips and stuff that they wrapped him in after. Yeah. They mummified him. So he's streaking somewhere because that stuff's still there. Yeah. And so they talk to the guy and I think the angel guy is do not be afraid. He is risen. And the women leave. They're scared. Sometimes they're scared. I don't know. I can't remember if they're scared or they're excited or both. Maybe some of both. I mean, I would be a little alarmed,
wouldn't you?
They're so
scared they get a little excited.
I would be a little alarmed. But so then they go and they tell people. They don't just tell everybody. They tell, what do they go to? The disciples, I guess, and tell them Jesus is risen. The story that I remember is that the disciples didn't believe them. But then the disciples were going about their business and whatever, and Jesus appeared to them and kind of wrung them out a little bit for not believing.
Right.
That he had risen. And I don't know, in one of the stories I recall, there was one of the disciples, God, I can't remember which one it was, doubting Thomas, that had to he needed to finger Jesus's holes.
Yep.
To make so before he would believe, which is not really the point of faith, huh?
That's true. Yep.
Yeah. And don't you think that kind of negates the point of faith if he has to finger the holes?
Yeah.
To believe. So anyway, Thomas goes about fingering Jesus's holes, and while the other 11 of them watch. And so I don't know if they charged money for this or if Mary Magdalene got involved. I'm not really sure.
3 shekels. Come on, guys.
But I can't remember. Trying to think if there's anything past that. I know that at some point, and I don't know how, what the time frame was for how long he was resurrected, but on earth, came back. So I don't know how long, maybe a week or something. I don't know. I think he appeared to different people at different times. But then he just, body and everything was brought back up to heaven. The end of the Bible study today.
No, we're going to have to read.
What?
All 4 accounts.
But I didn't get it right. I'm absolutely sure that they charged money for it. Was like the first OnlyFans.
Was it?
Yeah. With the doubting Thomas and Mary Magdalene and the hole poking with Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the first.
I don't think so. They didn't charge anything. Jesus just sort of scolded Thomas for needing to poke his holes. But
I feel like Jesus, just lay back and enjoy it.
Well, we're going to read all 4 of them.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to be pointing out the differences and everything like that, because
the 4 different accounts in the 4 gospels.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to be we still need to do that.
Oh, all right. And then if we must.
Okay. What's up, heathens?
How y'all doing?
So I'm going to be conducting the Bible study today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope everybody is ready for this shit show. Despite what most Christians that listen to this show probably believe, I'm not ignorant of the Bible. I know it pretty well, but that's the whole joke at the very beginning. So we're going to be progressing through Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John's resurrection parts. And what we're taking as a resurrection part is pretty much the end of the Gospels. So it's going to start with the women, however many number of them there are, coming to the tomb. And I actually informed you a little bit wrong in the very beginning, because it wasn't the day after he was entombed. It was technically the quote unquote the 3rd day after.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sunday. It was not. Yeah, that's right. Which really isn't 3 days from Good Friday, but. Yeah, I digress.
Whatever. So anyways, we're going to be starting there. So we're starting off in Mark 16, just so that everybody knows where the resurrection narratives are in the Bible. It's Mark 16, Matthew 28, Luke 24, John 20 through 21. So those are the resurrection narratives that we're going to be going over. Okay. They're vastly different too. We're also sticking with the NIV, considering that's what the Daily Bible uses primarily.
Yeah.
So this is going to, when we actually get to this part in the Daily Bible, it's going to be pretty much the same that we're reading. So let's...
They'll probably, you know what they'll probably do with the Daily Bible, and we haven't gotten there, but they'll probably combine the stories into a single Jesus resurrection story.
Yep.
And just have the verses all intertwined.
Yeah.
That's probably what they'll do.
Yeah, which is not really how it should be done, but
no, agreed.
Whatever. But anyways, all right, so we're going to start in Mark 16, and especially here at the very beginning, I want to kind of what's called read horizontally. And what I mean by that is going chronologically in the way that they were written, being that we'll first read Mark, we'll first read Matthew, we'll then read Luke, and then read John.
Okay, so are we going to, when we read Mark, are we going to read the added portion when we read Mark, or are we going to read it later?
We'll read the added portion as like one whole thing.
Okay.
And
you'll just explain it.
We'll explain why it's called the added portion.
Okay.
But all right, so you ready to start from Mark 16?
I am ready.
Yeah, your butthole's puckered?
I mean, sure.
All right, so Mark 16:1 says, when the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome bought
Salome.
Yeah, Salome.
Salami. That's who was with
Salami.
Mm-hmm.
Bought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus's body.
See, they were getting them all tenderized and everything.
Yep.
That was the plan.
For barbecue later. That's correct. That's how it happened.
I mean, don't they have to burn them for God?
I don't think they burn the bodies for God. Oh. Normally you gotta burn like the entrails of a goat or something.
Oh yeah, the intestines of a cow.
Yeah.
Got it.
Whatever. So anyways, very early on the first day of the week, so Sunday, just after sunrise, apparently the cock crowed, and they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?
That's a fair question. I bet you that was a big fucking heavy rock.
So that's what they asked. That's Mark. So now let's go to Matthew 28.
Okay.
All right. So Matthew 28 starts with, after the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. And
the other Mary.
That's the preface to it. There's no question about rolling away the tomb or anything like that, or rolling away the cover stone or anything like that. That's just Mary and this other Mary person.
Mary and Mary.
Very, very specific here. I mean, I don't know how much more specific you could get with the other Mary, but it's whatever.
I mean, that's the mother of James, right? Is who they're saying. That's the same, but Mary and Mary, they don't specify. And this one was written after. Interesting they don't include that.
Yeah. Now let's go to Luke 24. Luke 24 says, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. And that's all it talks about with them actually getting to the tomb.
Okay.
And then John 20 says, early the first day of the week, while it was still dark, so before sunrise.
Okay.
Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance.
She was alone.
Huh?
She was alone.
She's alone. Just right out the gate, that's where it starts out at.
Okay.
So as you can tell, with the very beginning, Mark has Mary the mother of James, or Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome, so not Jesus's mom.
So Mary the mother of James. This is not the James, the brother of Christ.
No, I mean,
James, brother of Jesus.
I feel like it would be more important for Mark to specify that it was Mary, mother of Jesus.
That's what I would thought. I kind of wondered about this portion because I thought, well, maybe they're saying mother of James because James is still alive and Jesus isn't. But why wouldn't they say Jesus' mom? It has to be a different James.
Right.
Okay.
There were different James. James is a very common name. So.
Well, sure. So was Yeshua.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in Matthew, we have Mary and the other Mary, whoever in the fuck that was. And then Luke just has the women.
The Whammons.
The Whammons. And then John just has Mary Magdalene coming.
Okay.
All right. So going back to Mark 16:4, we have, but when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed.
I would be too. Do you think they thought at first it was Jesus? Because they just say they saw, I mean, maybe they didn't see his face. Maybe they saw his face and knew it wasn't him.
Yeah.
But it just said a young man dressed in a white robe.
Yeah. So, young man dressed in a white robe. Now, fast forward to Matthew 28:2.
Okay.
Now we have, there was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men.
What?
Oh, yeah. Just different perspectives, right?
I mean, if you just took these two, this is not a different perspective.
No.
This is a whole ass different story. In the last one, the stone was already gone.
Right.
And the guy was just, the white angel in white was just sitting in the thing.
Right.
was just sitting inside the tomb. No mention of any earthquake, nothing coming down from heaven, nothing like lightning.
No.
This is a lot.
This is a lot.
This is a big expansion.
Right. All right. So let's go to Luke now.
Okay.
Luke 2 has, they found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee." So that's going a little bit farther than the Matthew portion, but I couldn't just end it like right in the middle of a verse. But this one's a lot more like Mark in that there was no like angel that like just appears and slaps the stone away. It's
this was 2 angels appearing,
right?
But not with an earthquake, and the stone was already rolled away,
and they were bedazzled with the lightning stuff. On their clothes. So now we're going to go to John 2, who says, "So she came running to Simon Peter." If you recall, Mary Magdalene had went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance, right? So it was already gone.
Yeah, there were no angels, nothing like that.
Right.
She just saw it, saw the stone had been removed and ran away to Simon Peter.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then in verse 2 it says, "So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, 'They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him.' So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him, went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand the scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying." So, no angel in John whatsoever.
Right, no angel, no earthquake, just Simon Peter. Mary Magdalene running into, and they got Simon Peter and the other disciple, one who Jesus had loved.
Right.
Is this loved like God loved and renamed Israel? Jacob?
I don't know. Maybe. Probably.
Okay.
Well, actually, in John, it continues with Mary. It says, "Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw 2 angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot." So this one has 2 angels inside of the tomb. Sitting.
Already in the tomb.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So now let's go back to Mark. And I think that what we'll do now is we'll just transition into just straight reading each one, because they're gonna start differing pretty wild. You can already tell how they're differing pretty wildly. It's gonna be really hard.
Yeah, I mean, even the basic, like, I understand that when you have different accounts of things, especially when it comes to eyewitnesses, you're going to have variations. Generally, 4 people are not going to tell the same story about a single event.
Right.
Exact. Right.
But this is ridiculous.
But this is a lot. Like, there are significant differences here, not that cannot be explained away by just, well, this is just 4 different accounts with minor variations. These aren't minor variations.
Right. They're not.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go back to Mark and we'll just finish up on Mark. It's really short.
Okay.
So Mark 16:6, if you don't recall from just a few minutes ago, when the women looked into the tomb after seeing that the stone had been rolled away, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. All right. So a single young man dressed in a white robe.
No earthquake, nothing weird. The tomb was, the stone was already away.
Right. Also, not exactly identifying this person as an angel, at least not in the ways that are identified.
Right.
later.
Just dressed in a white robe. I mean, this could be, it doesn't even say like glowing white or anything. It just says a man dressed in a white robe.
Right.
Okay.
And so picking up with Mark 16:6, it says, "Don't be alarmed," he said. said, "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him? But go tell the disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. I don't know how this story gets told if they said nothing to anyone.
That's what I'm sitting here wondering. How does anybody know? I mean, it must have been the man in the white robe.
Right.
He must have spilled the beans because the bitches didn't tell anybody.
Right. All right. So after this point in Mark, it gets a little dicey as far as manuscripts go. In the earliest manuscripts that we have, there isn't like
it ends at verse 8.
Yeah, it ends at verse 8. And so typically when you're looking at these kind of manuscripts, the shorter, more succinct ones are more likely to be the ones closest to the original.
Well, the earliest one, also earliest
well,
one. Yeah.
Earliest and then the shortest or the most underdeveloped or whatever are typically what is thought of as to be the earliest example. Like if you have manuscripts that were written right around the same time, but you can't determine which one was earlier, this is kind of like the tiebreak.
Okay.
At least that's how historians sort it out. But there are manuscripts with a couple of different endings.
Okay.
So after 16:8, in some manuscripts,
after the women told nobody,
there exists this one line or these few sentences that says, "Then they quickly reported all these instructions to those around Peter, because fuck Peter, right? After this, Jesus himself also sent out through them from east to west the sacred and imperishable proclamation of eternal salvation. Amen." Yeah, that's the shorter like ending. Like of the tacked on endings, there's a short ending and then there's a long ending.
Okay, so that's not an NIV.
No. It's a footnote that says that this is at the very bottom. There's a footnote that says that this is in one of the manuscripts.
So that would be like verse 9.
Yeah,
and it ends after verse 9.
Right.
Okay.
And then the longer one, which is I guess the one that the NIV considers to be more likely, maybe
it's the one that they have listed, but they do note that this is added on.
Right.
They say the earliest manuscripts do not have these verses.
Right, exactly. So these verses are the craziest ones of it. That's how we know that it was added by somebody else. But it says in verse 9.
Wait, before we talk, when do they think it was added?
So about the time that this was probably added somewhere in the middle of the 2nd century. And the reason why we say this is because we have very early manuscripts that have these different endings in it. And the earliest ones don't have this long ending or the shorter ending,
and the long endings start showing up about then,
right? And that's also about the time in the mid 2nd century when like the collections of all these books were being put together and passed around as like the Bible, like this is the Christian Bible.
And so given the timing, we would know that it would not have been the same author.
Right. Well, given the timing, it would have been the same author, but also the textual analysis of this section is
definitely not the same author.
Definitely not the same. Like it's just written completely differently than Mark actually writes.
And we don't know by who.
We don't know by who, either the extended ending or Mark. They're both anonymous.
Yeah. Oh, right. I just mean for the sake of the argument, we just wrote Mark, right? Just for the sake of this particular thing, we know the author was anonymous, but Mark did what we attribute as Mark did not write this.
Right. John Mark definitely didn't write this thing. Okay. So in Mark 16:9, it says, "When Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had driven 7 demons.
All named Jezebel."
Yeah. She went and told those who had been with him and who were mourning and weeping. When they heard that Jesus was alive and that she had seen him, they did not believe it. Afterward, Jesus appeared in a different form to 2 of them while they were walking in the country.
In a different form?
Yeah.
Like he was a fucking shapeshifter at this point?
Well, so this is another reason why, it's said that this was added much later, is because this is actually sort of like a condensed Emmaus Road story that we'll read in Luke here in a little bit. But yeah, he appears in a form that is not known to these two people that are walking.
So they don't see him as Jesus.
Right.
He doesn't appear as Jesus to them.
Right.
Okay.
But this was written in order to harmonize Mark with the other gospel.
You know what else is super interesting about this is there are significantly more details in this than the rest of the rest of Mark.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Continuing in Mark 16:13, it says, "These returned and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either." Which is kind of weird because Jesus appeared to them in a different form while they were walking to the country, and then without explanation, it's like they reported it. It's like some weird fuck just started walking with us, and I don't know what in the hell.
Yeah, that seems like
random person joining you on a walk. I don't believe it. All right. So in verse 14, it says, "Later, Jesus appeared to the 11 as they were eating. He rebuked them for their lack of faith and their stubborn refusal to believe those who had seen him after he had risen. He said to them, 'Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name, they will drive out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands. And when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all. They will place their hands on sick people and they will get well.'"
Do not drink deadly poison. You will not be fine.
Yeah, well, so you can also see where like the snake handlers kind of come from, and the whole idea that like Christians can drive demons out, and then the whole speaking in tongues thing.
You know what I've always found really interesting, and this is the first time I saw a Bible with red text. Now, at least the Catholic Bibles I had did not have red text. Red text, for those of you who are not familiar, those that's supposedly Jesus's words.
Right.
Those are quotes. Now, I could never square away red text, and I always got in trouble. I mean, we've talked about it sometimes with y'all. I always got in trouble in Sunday school and youth group and all those other fucking church things, school even, because I would ask too many questions. There is no possible way that when any of these gospels were written, they had quotes from Jesus. They were too late. They were too late really for anyone who had been there to be alive still, for the most part.
Right.
There are no writings. Like, we have no Jesus writings. Like, Jesus didn't write anything. So the red text had to have been all made up.
I mean, yeah. Pretty much. Paul is our only independent connection, and so.
But Paul doesn't talk about this.
No, he doesn't. That's my point.
Yeah,
is that all of those sayings by Jesus had to have been made up in some fashion.
Yeah. I mean, and they do it like it's quotes. If I feel like maybe as I was growing up and reading this, I wouldn't have had so much trouble with it if they had done like summaries. Jesus told them blah, blah, blah versus quoting, because I always found that really strange, because I knew that the gospels were written later and they wouldn't have quotes from Jesus. So anyway, that's something I've always found very interesting. And in the I don't know, in the version I'm reading, this is in red text. I don't know if your version is in red, what you're reading.
Oh, no, this one doesn't have red text in it.
Okay.
I'm just reading off a website.
Oh, so am I, but mine, I'm in the Bible app, but it has red text. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, after all of that, in verse 19, it says, "After the Lord had spoken to them, he was taken up into heaven and he sat at the right hand of God. Then the disciples went out and preached everywhere. The Lord worked with them and confirmed his word by the signs that accompanied it."
Okay.
And that's how it ends in Mark. So, you can tell how like radically different that section was versus the rest of Mark.
I've heard, and I actually heard Lycona say this in the Ehrman Lycona debate, that they would like to find a tomb with Jesus's body in it. Didn't he say that?
Probably. I mean, there is at least one tomb that is recognized as being the tomb of Jesus.
But I mean, the body wouldn't be there.
Right.
And I mean, but I remember, I recall him saying that because he was talking about, proving that, the body of Jesus, that it was the bones, that it was Jesus's bones and things like that, like proving. He said, we'll have to go back and watch when we get the link to the recording.
Right.
But he was talking about that, and I'm like, how would you be able to identify? You could maybe time, you could get it to, a time frame, but like
Oh,
you
you
have
mean in,
nothing to
like-
compare, like DNA tests, and so you would know those were Jesus's bones, but you have to have something to test against.
Oh, so you're like, you're meaning that like Conan says that you could easily falsify it by showing Jesus.
Well, no, he said that he would like to have, I don't remember exactly what he said now, but it was that he would like to have the bones so that they could basically prove that Jesus was crucified and was buried in the tomb and all that. And I didn't think about that then, but I'm looking at this now, and Jesus's body was gone.
Supposedly, yeah.
And he was body and soul taken to heaven in the Gospels.
Yeah.
His body was taken.
Mm-hmm.
So his bones wouldn't be here.
Right.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
I didn't mean to like sidetrack the conversation.
No, that's fine. I love hearing your thoughts.
Okay.
So now we're going to go to Matthew 28:5, and it's just the rest of this chapter that we'll have to read, so it's not much.
Okay.
So in Matthew 28:5, this is starting right after the guards froze like dead men.
Oh, the guards that we didn't know about before.
Right. The guards are a completely new invention by Matthew.
Oh, this was also the earthquake story.
Yes, there was an earthquake. An angel came down,
Smacked the rock,
smacked the stone, and his appearance was like lightning and everything like that. So the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." It's really weird.
That's like when Rosie finishes her vacuuming jobs and she's like, "I have finished my job." He's like, "Now I have told you."
Yeah. And so Matthew continues with, "So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell the disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. 'Greetings,' he said."
Seems like a weird thing to say. "Greetings."
Yeah.
Women's.
They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." This seems redundant because the angel has already told them to go to Galilee. And then Jesus just pops in and is like, "Greetings. Also, don't be afraid. Go and tell people." Like, it seems like it doesn't need to be done. But for some reason, Jesus was like, maybe they didn't get the message. Now the guards report, which is Matthew 28:11. It goes on with, "While the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, 'You are to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble.' So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed, and this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day."
What?
Yeah, so basically after Mark's gospel, people were like, well, they could have just stolen the body. Like, what? I mean, they got there and the stone was rolled away. Like, obviously somebody stole the body.
Well, and it seemed like the soldiers really wanted people to think that. Because the governor, I think they would have gotten in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
So they were bribed.
Yeah, exactly. And so what Matthew does is invent the first apologetic for the empty tomb. And that's that there were guards at and he just creates it. This is a whole new invention by Matthew in order to circumvent the whole idea that, the disciples stole the body. And then further cemented this whole anti-Semitic view of the Jews in the Gospels by saying that the Jewish priests bribed them to say that the disciples took it. So, I mean, it's kind of like retroactively retconning, I think is the term. They retconned the excuse or the explanation that people had come up with for the empty tomb.
Okay.
Next is the Great Commission. This is Matthew 28:16. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age."
Okay.
And that's it. And then that's when, like obviously in Mark 16, there's no like ascension or anything, at least in the original version. Matthew, there's not exactly an explicit ascension, but you know that he ascended into heaven after this, I guess. And, but the important part is that it happens pretty much directly after Jesus resurrects. Okay, that's an important part to take away from.
Okay.
All right, so now let's go to Luke 24. I think we're going to be starting in 24:7 is where we're at. Okay. So this is after the women had bowed their faces down to the angels, the two men in clothes that are described like angels appear in the tomb and everything like that. Okay.
Yeah, there was no earthquake in this one.
No earthquake or anything like that.
The stone was already rolled away. Okay.
So 24:7 starts with, the Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of the sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again. They then remembered his words. So that was that was the whole thing. That was the angel reminding them that Jesus had prophesied it, and it emphasized the fact that Jesus had to be handed over to the sinners and be killed and everything like that. So that was all part of the plan, is basically what is saying.
I guess they had just forgotten his words until that point, and they were reminded, then they remembered.
Exactly.
Okay.
I guess. All right. So Luke 24:9 says, when they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles.
Where the fuck is Salome?
Yeah,
Who the fuck is Joanna?
I don't know. But, notice how it went from the women, very vague, and now it's very specific to Mary Magdalene, Joanna, mother of James, and the others.
Yeah.
Random women that I guess went.
Yeah. With spices. To season Jesus's body.
Yeah. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense.
I mean, who believes women?
Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened.
Jesus went streaking.
Exactly. So now this is the Emmaus Road story. On the road to Emmaus. This is Luke 24:13.
I thought they were supposed to go to Galilee.
Well, we're getting there.
Okay.
So now that same day, so the same, like this happened, right? And then the very same day,
okay.
Two of them were going to the village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. But they were kept from recognizing him.
This is like the two that he appeared in a different form.
Right.
In the edition on Mark.
Right.
Okay.
He asked them, what are you discussing together as you walk along? What are you talking about there?
You talking about me, bros?
They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days? What things? He asked. About Jesus of Nazareth, they replied. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed, before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all of this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but they didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus. So this is Cleopas, who is apparently an apostle, or at least part of that group, a disciple maybe. And he's on road with some other guy who has a stranger come up and start wondering what happened.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because how he talks about these things, like, do you not know? It was so shocking that this guy would not know what has been going on. And that he was, the way he described him, a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. And it just is strange to me that there wouldn't be any writings from this time about this. If it was such a big deal, that it would be shocking that someone didn't know what was going on.
Right, exactly.
How is nothing written from this time?
Maybe it didn't happen.
Oh, perhaps.
That's just a crazy thing, I believe, though. Anyways, so continuing in verse 25, he says, he said to them, how foolish you are, and how slow to believe all the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself.
God, I bet you that took forever.
Yeah. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus could...
So sorry. He explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. The scriptures here would be Jewish scripture.
Right. The Old Testament, the Septuagint.
All of the Old Testament stuff that talked about the Messiah. So there are people who say that Jesus is not talked about in the Old Testament.
Right.
And right here in the New Testament, it says that Jesus himself explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself.
Right.
So this is evidence here that that's not true.
Right.
Okay, sorry. Please
It's okay. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight like Batman.
So as soon as they recognized him, he's gone.
Yeah.
Well, that's some shit.
They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?"
I don't know. Were they?
They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord is risen and has appeared to Simon."
Disciples assemble.
Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. Next is Jesus appearing to the disciples. So this is verse 36.
Gosh, this is so much longer.
It is. And John is actually 2 chapters, so look forward to that. So while they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you."
And also with you.
Yeah, yeah. That's like a reaction. That
And it was a Catholic tick.
All former Catholics have. Yeah. They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled? And why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." Now, that's true. A ghost doesn't. That's because he's a celestial being, so he would have flesh and bones, flesh, blood, and bones. But he says, "Look at my hands and my feet." Now, there would be holes in his feet. There would not be holes in his hands.
Well, I guess depending on the artwork you see.
On the artwork. But I'm just saying, by Roman crucifixion standards, they would have driven it through his wrists. So
well, that's because the hands won't hold him.
Right. Exactly.
That's just dumb.
So continuing with verse 40.
I'm sure they figured that out by trial and error.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's gross to think about, but probably true.
Continuing with verse 40, when he had said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still don't believe, it is because of joy and amazement, he asked them, "Do you have anything to eat?"
I've been busy like resurrecting and shit. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten in 3 fucking days. You guys got any bread or shit?
Well, they gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. He said to them, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the laws of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms." Directly appealing to scripture yet again. Then he opened their minds so they could understand the scriptures. He told them, "This is what is written. The Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the 3rd day, and repentance for the forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things. I am going to send you what my Father has promised, but stay in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high."
I want to be clothed with power.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's probably like a jacket. Like, do you think they got like a light jacket?
A cape.
Power? Like a cape?
Yes.
All right. Next is the ascension of Jesus. So this is verse 50. When he had led them out of the vicinity of Bethany, he lifted up his hands and blessed them. While he was blessing them, he left them and was taken up into heaven.
Whole ass body.
Then they worshipped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy, and they stayed continually at the temple praising God.
Okay.
And that's it for Luke. So this is like directly like after like his resurrection, he appeared to them, right? And he then, after giving his spiel, he goes and he ascends to heaven.
It's weird how he has to open their minds so they can understand scripture.
Well, I think this is just emphasizing how dumb as fuck they are.
Why would you pick fucking 12 dumbass disciples?
I mean, it's that way throughout all the Gospels, and it's to emphasize how dumb the Jewish people are.
Oh, that's rude.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you think about the Old Testament, that's essentially what the Old Testament is. God continuously like beating down the Jewish people because they're dumb as shit. The Bible's saying this, by the way.
Well, they won't follow the rules.
Right. That's my point.
Yeah, they keep getting distracted.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to be going to John. This is the latest gospel written, most likely in the 2nd century. And if you remember, we got to the point where Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and she saw 2 angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot.
Okay, so this is the one where Simon Peter, she went to get Simon Peter.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So starting in verse 13, it says, this is 2013, by the way. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize it was Jesus.
Another form?
I guess. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener. Racist.
He's a gardener in the Middle fucking East?
Yeah.
Okay.
She said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where have you put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary."
I'm sorry, I cannot get over the gardener. She thought he was the gardener.
She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher in Aramaic.
I mean, it sounds like some sort of pasta.
I was gonna say that. It sounds like a pasta.
What are you having for dinner? Rabboni.
Rabboni. I mean, Jesus did say that he's the bread and to take, pieces and eat him. So
maybe that's why they were putting spices on him.
Yeah, but they were spicing up the Rabboni.
Yep.
Okay, so 2017 continues with, Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her.
This is a good example of him saying, go instead to my brothers and tell them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, my God and your God. This is another one of those fictive kinship things.
Yep.
Where it's clear he says my brothers, and he's not talking about his brothers.
Right.
Like blood brothers.
Exactly. All right, continuing with 2019, we have, on the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you."
And also with you.
And also with you. After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. So they're just standing there with the door locked, and all of a sudden Jesus appears to all of them, and he's like, "Peace be with you." And everybody's like, "Oh, damn, I shit myself, God. Damn." All right, so in 2021, it continues with, again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And with that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." So he basically just breathes hot breath on them and says, "You can forgive sins."
Like fucking 3-day dead old dragon breath. That is not cool, Jesus. Get a fucking Tic Tac. Rude. Fucking rude.
All right. Now, continuing with 2024, it says, "Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when he came. So the other disciples told him, 'We have seen the Lord.' But he said to them, 'Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and I put my finger where his nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe.'"
I have to feel of his intestines.
Yep. "I must finger his holes."
So weird. I have to put my hand into his side. I'd be like, dude, you fucked up. You need a therapist? We'll find somebody.
Yeah. So a week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you."
And also with you.
Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." That was Jesus, smacking him a little bit.
Yeah.
Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed."
And fuck you.
So, I mean, it's kind of like a backhanded compliment there. It's like, you have seen me and believed, but you know what? It's better if you didn't.
It's better to have not seen. It's always better to believe something without evidence.
Apparently, according to Jesus, it is.
According to Jesus. Jesus. Believe without evidence. That's
Walk
what he
by
says.
faith, not by sight.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, continuing on with verse 30, it says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name.
Well, that's a fucking weird way to end it.
Yeah.
Jesus performed many other signs. We're not going to write them down, but you're just supposed to believe it. They're written in the annals of the case.
Yeah. So there's a whole other chapter after this where Jesus does a miraculous catch of fish again. But the entire point of the rest of this, which we'll get to this when we actually cover the New Testament, but basically what it comes down to is that Jesus spent about 40 days with the disciples, doing miracles and all this other stuff. And it even talks about who the eyewitness source is for John's gospel. And if you go to 21:24, it says, "This is the disciple who testifies to these things and who wrote them down. We know that his testimony is true." So just basically trust us, bro.
Yeah.
Is what it says. But the beloved disciple that supposedly is the source of information is most likely, as far as scholars can tell, is Lazarus. You remember Lazarus?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Lazarus is the guy, of course, who gets resurrected in John by Jesus, and that is the beloved disciple. So it's not like the disciple John or apostle John or anything like that. It's Lazarus, apparently.
But they don't actually have writings. It just says who wrote them down.
Right.
And we know his testimony is true, but they just said he wrote them down. They don't say this. I don't know. It's not, we don't have anything like this.
Right. Well, it's also weird that this disciple who would be illiterate wrote shit down.
Well, true. Plus they also didn't name who
Right.
it was. And it seems like they would have named.
Yeah. You've got to do some like textual analysis in order to even figure out like who this most likely
Might have
is.
been. Yeah.
But anyways, the entire Gospel of John ends with this, and this is 21:25. It says, Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written.
Not enough room in the whole world for all the books.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really weird that Jesus sticks around for a long period of time in John to do all these things, and apparently do so many things that you couldn't even fill like the entire world with books written about it. So I don't know, it seems kind of weird. But anyways, that's your Easter story. Pick one, whatever flavor you want. Personally, you know what? Here, and I want to hear what everybody's favorite Easter story is, but mine is definitely Matthew.
Yeah, why?
It's got so much. It's like a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah.
Like the angel comes down, bitch slaps the tombstone away, causes the guards to piss themselves and then faint, and then witnesses to the women. Like, how is there anything better than that?
I mean, I don't know. The whole shape-shifting thing is kind of weird. And I mean, technically they didn't really shape-shift. They just didn't recognize him.
Right.
But I don't know. I think what I find so interesting is apologists will claim there were just minor differences. But I mean, anybody who reads these, it's very evident these are not minor. These are not minor errors in storytelling.
Right.
These are whole ass different stories.
Definitely.
I mean, at every level, really. So I don't know. I don't really have a favorite. I guess Mark, because the one before they added shit in the 2nd century.
Yeah, it's a very cut and dry one.
Yep, 8 verses.
Yep.
But I do think it's interesting that some of them talk about ascension and some of them don't, which the ones that don't talk about ascension doesn't necessarily mean that didn't happen after and it just wasn't talked about. But
well, just
even the ascensions are different,
right?
And at different times.
Luke, he of course the author who did Luke also wrote Acts, right? And so Luke ends with the ascension of Jesus happening directly after. I guess John, I don't think that we didn't see where John said that he ascended into heaven like any certain amount of time. So it's just sort of like he was there for some kind of unspecified amount of time afterwards.
And then they just don't talk about it. It just basically stops talking.
Right. So it's just, that those are the Easter stories. So it's not about a bunny rabbit hiding his shit eggs around everywhere. It's about Jesus having 4 completely different resurrection narratives.
I mean, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. And we would love to hear from everybody down below what your favorite resurrection story is in the Bible, since there are 4 of them. Some are a lot more verbose than the others. But we would love to hear from you guys down below. And hey, while you guys are down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like Bible podcasts like this. Next week, we are going to be going back into the normal Bible study routine. So I think that we're going to be picking up with Zechariah.
Yes, we're going to do Zechariah's prophecies next time.
Right. All right. So if you guys want more of that, then tune in next week. Otherwise,
don't forget to stand up and use your voice.
Bye, heathens.
Bye, y'all.